up here. Give me a second.
Remember, we should probably check with each person, make sure they're good.
There we go. Yeah.
And then also the highlighted statement.
Yes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it at the beginning. I'll do it at the end again at the work session, and I'll do it during our little short meetings.
Good deal. Thank you.
Fastest meeting on earth.
That's what I like to hear.
We have broadcast.
Yes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it at the beginning. I'll do it at the end again at the work session. Is that feedback?
It's live now. I'm putting it on the city website. So that'll be off in like 2 seconds.
Where would we be without John? You know?
He can't ever leave.
Yeah, for us to have this be able to go, we would have to hire somebody to,
Mhm.
or IT people to come in and do this.
We are live. The meeting is live. Carmen's connecting to audio.
Great. See some first agenda items. That's good.
So like when Carmen's name comes out, is it just trying to connect first, or is she just going to be on? Did we see her? Have we had a meeting?
Last week she
Last time
showed
I
up.
saw her.
John Curtis is having some trouble.
Uh-oh.
Can you call John Curtis? He's having trouble. There's somebody coming in and waiting for him. He'll come on in a minute.
There's Carmen. Hello, Carmen.
Okay. Did it? Okay. Yes, no problem.
Is he at it?
He said he found it.
All right.
Does Carmen have two of them going?
Yeah, it's that way she can see the crowd. She's using her phone and her computer. So
She's using her phone
John
and
Curtis is
computer?
coming in right now.
There's John. Hey, John. Oh, we're missing his Bob.
And Art.
Oh, and Art. Bob and Art. Did Art ever get on video?
Art's there.
I'm here. I've been listening.
Oh, okay. Hey, Art. How are you?
Well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm good.
Good.
Staying healthy up there?
Trying so hard. Yes. How about yourself?
Good. Y'all didn't lose too much water pressure Friday, did you?
Actually not. I mean, it was very cloudy, the water, when it got on, but I guess that was from the chlorine. But I thought everything went very well. I thought the way that they posted the warnings to everyone by, 8 o'clock in the morning, door to door, I thought was excellent. So I think from my point of view, it went extremely well. I don't know about fixing it, how well that went, but it seemed to get done. So that's good.
Good. Good. That's good to hear. John made sure that happened.
Yeah, no, it happened. It was extremely well done.
Good. Good. Hey, Bob. Are you you might be muted, Bob. Can't hear you.
Hello.
There you go.
We are streaming now. so-
We are streaming. We're live. We have everybody. Art's on audio, and we've got the rest of the council. I see pictures. And Carmen, can we hear you, Carmen? Are you going to talk to us? You might be on mute, Carmen.
Mute, Carmen.
Here we go.
There we go.
There we go. Now we can hear you. All right, we're going to get this work session started. First, since we are live streaming, we're just letting everybody know around the city that's listening this evening that if you go to the city's website under the COVID-19 page, and you'll find the resources for food distribution, financial assistance options, and more. We will continue to update this page as more resources become available, so we encourage you to keep checking back. And we'll repeat this again a couple times during the meeting in our regular meeting. So we'll jump right in since we've got Carmen on with us right now. We want to talk about, am I talking too loud, John, or is that good? Okay. About, moving forward, we still don't know when we're going to be able to gather in groups. And Carmen and the city feels that we need to start looking at how to keep things moving along so we don't get stacked up, and time is money. We all know that. And we may, not my choice, but we may have to get into a situation that we're going to have to do some virtual public meetings. And Carmen's going to talk to us a little bit about how that may work. Carmen?
You bet. Thank you, Mayor, Council. You have in your packets from me, Mayor and Council, a brief memo that I wrote to you late last week that sort of queued this up for you. And as Mayor mentioned in his introduction of this issue here, and is outlined in my memo, we as a city have for over a month now taken the approach that we simply pushed pause and rescheduled and bumped any pending quasi-judicial matters. And just for your refreshment and the public who may be watching and listening, quasi-judicial matters are those that are when individuals come to us with requests for permission to do something with their own property or with their own business. These are land use matters, zonings, developments. These are or can be licensing matters, liquor licensing, marijuana licensing, business licensing. Those are all quasi-judicial matters. And as a general rule, Mayor and Council, of course, in usual normal times, we have hearings on these matters, these quasi-judicial matters, and we have those in chambers, in person, obviously, where you, as council or planning commission, as they sometimes hear these things first in land use, sit as a judge would in a courtroom. And so, just like court and the challenges that are presented in courtrooms today, all over, and courthouses all over the nation and Colorado, we have locally been presented as other Colorado municipalities with what do we do when we can't have court in person like we usually do? And by court, I mean our quasi-judicial matters. Of course, they aren't judicial proceedings, but they are quasi-judicial. They bear all the hallmarks of court proceedings, as we've discussed before, Council. People testify under oath. There are exhibits, there's testimony. You as judges in the matter and planning commission before you have certain criteria, certain law to apply. Because of all these hallmarks of a judicial proceeding, because of the due process that is implicated legally for both the applicant, but then also other people involved and who have a right to testify, neighboring properties, the public at large in the case of things like zonings and rezonings. All of the parties involved have certain due process rights that are best protected and best safeguarded with an in-person hearing, where you as judge get to hear people when they testify, get to witness people's demeanor, read their body language, listen to their voice inflections. All those things are hallmarks of a judicial process. Not only you as the decision maker, but the people of whom I spoke who have legal rights in the matter, the applicant, the public, they also benefit when they are in the room with the person whom they might want to cross-examine, who they might want to hear testify, who they might want to then follow up with their own questions, who might want to present an exhibit to you so we can all look at it at the same time, so we can all point at the same presentation, same PowerPoint. all these things are difficult to impossible to do remotely on a meeting like this, right? I right now when I'm talking realize there might be a little bit of a delay when you hear me. It might be not as easy for you to hear me or judge, how I'm speaking to you. So we all realize that to do these kinds of hearings remotely presents some challenges and some obstacles that wouldn't otherwise exist in person. However, as Mayor said, we as a city cannot indefinitely put all of these quasi-judicial proceedings on hold. And that's what we've done for, again, a little over a month, hoping that very soon we would be able to do these hearings in person again. Well, City Administrator Marsh and I visited most recently last week and said, given the governor's safer at home order and the relaxation that we have seen that is going to come, and having seen local reactions to that state order, most notably Jeffco, Jefferson County, City and County of Denver, several other jurisdictions have decided to not maybe relax things as quickly as Governor Polis has authorized. And the governor's own relaxation of stay at home, which is effective basically through May 28th, gentlemen. The governor's own relaxation order still prohibits gatherings of 10 people or more, still prohibits social interactions as a general rule, still effectively prohibits us having public meetings in City Hall. So for at least another month, we are still in the position of having meetings like we're doing right now over Zoom or other virtual platforms. And as I mentioned in my memo, Mayor and Council, I don't have a magic deadline or a time frame under the law that I can tell you absolutely must start having these quasi-judicial hearings again. While I don't have a magic deadline or magic number of how many continuances are too many, I want to tell you here this evening, and I would like to hear your reaction to my take and opinion that I think the city administrator shares, which is I think we as a city really need to start planning to, if you are comfortable having these quasi-judicial hearings remotely, and figure out a way that we can do those in a manner that best protects everybody involved. I will stop now and wait to sort of hear your reactions to all of that. And before I do that, I will just note that attached to the memo from me in your packets is a suggested tool for us as a city, should you choose to explore or authorize us as staff to explore having these meetings remotely. And the attachment to my memo is basically a form, a request to have this hearing remotely, and a consent to have these sort of hearings remotely that I would recommend that we would have, that we would obtain from anybody who wants to have their hearing proceed. Because I do think it's important for not only us as a city to recognize that it's not ideal to do these things remotely. It might be necessary, but it's not ideal. But I think it's important for us to get that recognition from the applicant as well, and to get the applicant's consent to do this. Again, and if an applicant wants to kick the can down the road, if an applicant wants to say, hey, look, we'd rather all be in the same room too, then fine. Then I think legally we're absolutely okay to continue to reschedule. But we, I think as a city, and I would like you, council, to talk a little bit about your comfort with having these hearings when we have an applicant say, hey, look, I'm tired of being rescheduled. I want to have my hearing now. And please proceed with my application. So with that, council and mayor, I invite your comments on the topic, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, I'll start and reiterate. I think that being in person is very important to, I think it shows complete transparency, gives the opportunity for input from the public, and ask the applicants questions face to face. And so I feel that's very important. Again, on the other side of that is to continue to delay when none of us have a crystal ball that tells us when this is all going to be over with, when we can start gathering. And, you know, and we may have projects that come to us that we may have 50 or 60 people in here, and we may get up to 25 people gathering, and it still kind of limits us and restricts us of the attendance of the community to come in and have input and hear the project themselves.
Yeah.
I think that this is timely, and I'm looking at the form. I think the form was well done. It says right at the top, request and consent. And of course, I think you can't help but notice that. It shows we're trying. And, you know, I wanted to add, heaven forbid, if we have a setback on this opening, you know, a resurgence, for example, we're ready to go, you know, and we're doing the best we can under the circumstances. But anyways, I agree with everything the mayor said, and I believe we should move forward with this request and consent to electronic hearing form.
What this does is put an option out there to the public and the people requesting a hearing where the city doesn't make a hard decision, but we give the applicants a choice. And if they want to still continue and have a live hearing through several delays of this quarantine, if you will, you know, that's their choice. So I like the idea of putting an option out there to the public.
Well, I have a different viewpoint. First of all, if you read Carmen's memo, which is very well stated, and you read starting with the first sentence of the second paragraph, you have to have all those things in place to give due process to all the parties. When you take just the applicant and say to him or her, you can go along with this, and you spell out everything. Where's the due process of asking the public to sign something like this, willing to give up their rights to be at a meeting for all the reasons that Carmen so nicely pointed out? I don't think we have the legal right to take away the due process of the majority. That's what we're here for, is the majority, not the minority. And I think we would be in trouble from the other side, having a resident or a group of residents file a legal action against us as well for processing an application and not giving all these things in the second paragraph an opportunity to exist. And I think, and I'm not a lawyer, Carmen, but I think a judge would look at that very closely, and would be very reluctant to take away the due process of the public. So I believe that we have to give it more time, and being there's no fine date that you can give us that would demonstrate when we've gone past the line with this virus, and when you see all the deadlines that the federal government and state governments have changed and moved back and forth, when you listen to the medical people saying that if we continue to expand like we are, that the virus is going to affect more people, I don't know that we have the knowledge to say we should just go ahead at a given point without having more information and more legal clarification as time goes by, to just arbitrarily say that this, and it's a well-written application, don't get me wrong, but I just believe it's one-sided. I'm done. Well, temporarily.
And I'm happy to respond. Good comments, Councilor Cacavelli.
John or Jim, do y'all want to make any comments?
Sure, sorry.
I think I'm pretty good. Yeah, nobody knows where this is going to go, so I guess I don't know how this pans out. Yeah, I'm more open ears on this one, I believe. So, yeah, I really don't have anything to add. Sorry.
All right, no problem, Jim. Thank you. John? You're on mute, John.
There we go.
Try now, John.
All right.
There you go.
I thought somebody I had to do. All right. Yeah. Everybody made a comments already that I agree with. So,
Okay.
do we have anybody waiting for a hearing?
We do. We do have the Argo to go to Planning Commission for the gondola. And we also have a variance for Scott Pinnell project at this point.
And an HPRC just got scheduled.
Which one?
At HPRC.
Yep.
Oh, HPRC.
Yep.
And we also may have the Habitat come back to us also.
Oh, so we have quite a few.
We got a few
Indeed.
we've got a few in the hopper. And everybody's been very patient and just kind of waiting on the decisions that we make and how we move forward with this, or if we, like was suggested, maybe wait a little bit longer before we make any decisions.
Right.
Carmen?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Indeed, we do have a few folks and applications that are indeed ready for hearing. And we know that we have some that very soon will be ready for hearing. So, to Councilor Cacavelli's, I think, valuable comments, that there is the rub is admittedly, we cannot as a city guard against a legal challenge on every front, nor could we possibly seek and gain the consent of every citizen of the city to have a public hearing on which the public has a right to speak. That he nailed exactly the issue, which is why communities, and again, we are not alone, are struggling with this. Communities across Colorado are dealing with this and grappling. I will tell you that the majority of the municipalities of which I know and with whom I work have decided to go ahead after now about 6 weeks of waiting. They decided to go ahead and with full knowledge and maybe awareness, right, and acknowledgement of the issues that Councilor Cacavelli raised. Is look, there's a little bit of a risk to proceed. Now, to be fair, and I think all councilors agree with this too, there is risk in continuing to do nothing. And that's why I present this option to you tonight to talk about. And I wanted to be available to address any questions you have, because we are faced with potential liabilities and risks no matter what you do, should you choose to wait longer. We do run the risk of an applicant who is ready to go, who has been ready to go, and whom we have rescheduled already a few times, and we have folks that we've done that to, as Mayor just explained. We run the risk of those folks saying, hey, you can't just indefinitely reschedule me. You cannot do that without a realistic time frame, city. You're effectively denying me. You are effectively saying no, because you're effectively prohibiting me from getting any answer. That's the risk of continuing to do nothing, continuing to kick the can down the road. So as maybe Councilor Boland described, the request and consent form and that sort of process that we may utilize, if you're comfortable with it, attempts to deal proactively with one of the biggest risks and liabilities and exposures, which is the due process rights of the applicant. I, again, don't ignore or try to duck the issue that Councilor Cacavelli raised, which is other folks have legal rights too, for sure. And the best we can do to, I think, protect everybody's rights is try to figure out a way to give the applicant a time frame to proceed, to know that they are going to get a yes or no, and at the same time, to the best we can, let the public participate fully, hear, speak, submit exhibits, figure out a way to do that as best we can electronic. So that's sort of the option that we're trying to.
But Carmen, what we're missing is that you're not putting people on equal grounds. It takes nothing for someone to get in their vehicle and drive to City Hall. There's many people who do not have the technology that would like to participate, that under any circumstances will not be able to participate because we wouldn't be able to help them. Maybe don't own a computer, whatever. So we wouldn't be on equal grounds. We would be taking the applicant and giving him or her everything that's available and telling the public, hey, you're on your own. Somehow you've got to get to this meeting, you're streaming or whatever. And a lot of people are not capable of doing that or can't afford to have that equipment to do that as well. And you talk about we don't have the right. The governors and the mayors of cities have been taking away and putting in all kinds of restrictions and extending things, and they have the right to do that. And governors are saying, let's open up the states, and certain mayors in those particular states are saying, no, I don't want to do that. So there's I mean, everybody is changing everything as we go along. So why can't we do the same? I mean, why you don't have anybody that has said to you at this point, I want a hearing. So why can't we just say?
Oh no, we do. We have.
And what was your answer?
Council hasn't authorized us to have quasi-judicial hearings remotely yet.
And that was the end of the conversation, I presume.
For now.
Okay, so for now, I mean, let's not assume I don't think we have the luxury of thinking someone. Now, let's talk about whomever wants the variance. I don't know how, that sounds kind of like a minor issue compared to some of the other issues. Is there not a way of segregating what would be more important to the public and less important, like a variance from one guy's property to another? Public wouldn't want to get involved in that, but if somebody wants to come in and put in a large development that would affect the whole city, then the public would want to be included in that. So isn't there a way of deciding which are more important and not more important and waiting until we can get the public more involved in the more important ones? The mayor hit it on the opening about being transparent. That's a thing that a lot of talk has been over the years here, and I'm sure in other communities, thinking that the city council, the mayor, whomever is in charge, has no transparency. That's all we have to do now is go ahead with the individual who wants to put in a large development and not give the public an opportunity to participate in the, like you suggest in your second paragraph, and what are they gonna say? Here we go again. No transparency, and we're back at, we've been doing well at getting people to these meetings. Several of the councilmen who have been on the council for much time have said often, and the few times I've been at the meetings, hey, wow, we're really getting people here. This really feels good. And now we're going to say, hey, we can have a meeting without you. Doesn't make sense to me.
And let me respond to those things. Good comments again. To your initial point, and you're not, which ties into your last one, which, hey, we're going to have meetings without you. No, nobody's suggesting we have a meeting without the public. Nobody is suggesting the public couldn't fully participate and shouldn't fully participate. And that ties into your first comment, which was, look, maybe we don't want the perception or the reality that the city is giving options or access to applicants or certain privileged people and not others. Absolutely not. I don't suggest that at all. And let me offer this, precisely the issue that you mentioned, which is a good one, which is that of privilege, of resource, of availability of access to the internet, of availability and just the option to participate remotely. You know, does everybody have that? No, absolutely.
Right.
Many folks do these days, but we can't ignore the fact that many, or even some, or even one person does not have that. So how do we deal with that? Can we deal with it as a city? I think you assumed the answer to that, Councilor Cacavelli, was no, we can't deal with that as a city. I disagree. I believe that we can deal with that by providing, and I've seen cities do this as well, providing, let's say, call it a kiosk or a set-aside room, a remote sort of, what do I want to say, isolated way in which anybody, a member of the public, who lets us know they need this can come to City Hall, because we are not going to have a mass gathering of people there, and we have available technology for them to participate. I have seen, you know, we could, if they were open, maybe contract with or utilize libraries or schools to help us with those kinds of resources, but I don't think we have that yet. But the point is, Mayor and Council, really good, fair comments about access and fairness and making sure that public who maybe do not have these technological resources at home, can we figure out a way to extend those resources to those people? I would absolutely say that would need to be part and parcel of a virtual meeting process, is having that available and figuring out how many stations like that we can have at City Hall safely for people who needed to come and have those kinds of resources available. These are all good comments, good details about which, you know, we would need to have further sort of logistic discussions with staff. If you, Mayor and Council, are comfortable with even exploring it as of now. And I guess that's this evening where I think Andy and I would like to hear you come out as a whole, is whether or not you wish us as staff to, we could do any number of things. One, not explore this any further right now. We could, as staff, two, green light virtual and remote hearings beginning now with the form provided in the packet and with such other safeguards to allow the public to participate that we as staff can figure out. We could, third option, come back to you again as staff with further details about how we would make these hearings work. Any of those options, and maybe even others I'm not thinking of, are available to you.
Well, Carmen, you know, I'm just thinking there might be some way for people, for example, who want to make a comment, come up the back door and leave through, you know, the front main stairs. And, you know, maybe they're spaced, you know, 10 feet apart. Everybody's given a few minutes. And that way, you know, they could make a comment and we can comply, because think all of Art's comments are something that, we would be, we all should be torn about. And
Sure.
that might be a way to do something like that. But I also see this as some kind of mitigation, because there's no doubt in my mind the city has liability. And I'll give you a real quick example.
Mhm.
Sometimes when you see somebody has an option on a property, maybe it's contingent on obtaining the financing, or it's contingent on rezoning or something.
Yep.
Because run. So I just believe they could, in some cases, they certainly could prove damage. And this would be a way for us to do the best that we can, given the national emergency. And perhaps if there's a way for folks to be safely spaced. And that's why I'm suggesting perhaps utilizing one designated entrance and one designated exit. Maybe, being one of the possibilities we can have people have their say as they should.
Good comments, Chuck.
I think that's a good plan, Chuck. The only thing is you lose the volume of the public as a whole, and I think that's important that you have the volume of people, the public there as a group, as one, and one individual at a time. You lose that volume. You lose the intensity of what they might say, whether it be good or bad. I'm not saying that everybody that's going to come to these meetings is going to be opposed to whatever's going on, but I think whether they're opposed or for it, it's the volume of the public as a whole who we represent that we need to hear as one voice, totally, not one at a time. That's where I'm getting with this, and I think the last meeting that the Planning Commission had clearly demonstrates, from what I heard, what I'm talking about. The public was there as a whole. People outside of Idaho Springs, people inside Idaho Springs. Some were opposed, mostly were opposed, I guess, some weren't. But you had the volume of the residents as a group, and you certainly got the message of what they wanted or didn't want. And I think individually you won't get that. I guess I've said everything I need to say. I don't mean to prolong this and make it a one-man argument. I just see it differently. I believe that, the public has a right, and we don't have a right to take it away.
So when Carmen mentioned liability to the city is what makes me really nervous, because you have somebody that's got money invested into a project or plans for a project and a crew ready to go if it happens. Where was I going with that? I just think that maybe why don't staff start working on a way like coming up with some options of how we can conduct one of those meetings over the next week or so, and come out with a laid out plan of how we would do that, and just present it back to council. Whether it's I just believe that once we start talking about liability, potentially the city getting sued for delaying a project when there was actually a way to do a public hearing, and we didn't do it. That's what really makes me nervous.
So can we have a sign-up sheet where anybody wants to speak that we could send this out to, and have that? I mean, we can't have all physical. I don't know if we can have a mix between physical and virtual or not. That's my question.
Yeah, and I think so, Councilor Curtis. I think those are the sorts of details that, as Mayor mentioned, if it's the consensus of council to maybe see some more of these details before you, we as staff can explore just what you described, Councilor Curtis, which is what would this really look like? Could we have maybe some things available at City Hall with social distancing, masks, etc.? Could we do that in tandem with things like this, things like Zoom, perhaps? So we could, Mayor just expressed council sort of the third option I described, which was, look, maybe bring us back some more concrete plans on what this might look like. That was his expression of opinion, but I'm interested in the consensus of the group, and we as staff will do whatever you like.
You know, we could think about maybe we could do it outside on a nice evening. Everybody could spread out, and you know, that could be an option. I don't know. John, you have something to say?
I beg, you know, that for me, Mayor, would beg the question, even with 6 feet in between more than 10 people, is that a gathering?
Yeah.
Would we be violating the, you know, I mean, it gets so absolutely hard, given the continued prohibition against gatherings of 10 or more folks to do this in person. There's the rub. Great suggestion, you know, we could go to Red Rocks or something and really space out, but maybe we would still be in a gathering, you know?
We've already identified 4 alternatives that would more than suffice to meet the requirements of the law that would work, that also I think would meet the requirements of council this evening based on this conversation. Andy and I have talked about a couple. We could bring that back to you with alternatives. I mean, there's multiple ways to accomplish this, and we have all the technology required, I think, to make everyone comfortable with what we do from a public participation standpoint.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's come up with some options and bring it back to council at the next work session.
Would that be the 11th, Mayor and Council?
We need to probably have work sessions and meetings every week. Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, next week.
Okay.
All right. Anything else for Carmen, council?
Thank you, Carmen, for your explanations. I appreciate it.
Hey,
Yep. Thanks.
absolutely, Mayor and Council, all of you. Great comments. You get the issues, and we'll do our best to see what we can come up with for you. I appreciate the direction.
Thank you.
We brought in 9 people at a time, have them in groups, and have 6 different presentations to accommodate her. I mean, that's just another. Okay. Thank you, Carmen.
You're welcome, sir. Have a good meeting, y'all. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks.
All right.
All right, next thing on the agenda, you know, we talked a few weeks ago about forming a recovery task force, economic recovery, however we want to state it. We've gotten, I think I counted 11. Mary Broyles pulled her letter. She had something come up that she was going to do, so she will not participate. As always, we ask for letters of interest. We never deny anybody to be on this task force. I think all input is good input. I don't think any information is going to be bad information. And I think we've got a really good group of folks here that most are business owners here in town, and most, I'd say about half of them live in town. So if anybody has looked at the list, if anybody has any body that they may want to ask to be on this task force, we would entertain that. But I think we should start out with this many people and get it set up and start moving forward. Does anybody have any comments on that?
No, just that for such a small town, I think we have an amazing talent pool. We've got a local doctor, a bank vice president, like I mentioned, many very well-known business folks here. And I think it's super that we had that kind of response.
This is gonna be a big test, commitment. So yeah, with 11 people, I agree. Because it's gonna take a lot to do this, figure this out.
And we got a good cross section, as Chuck mentioned, especially with a doctor and the banker. I think they'll give us very intelligent input as well as the others.
Any other comments from council?
Yeah, Mike, I'm just wondering, we're looking, did I hear possibly a meeting as early as Wednesday night for this group?
I don't think we've set a first meeting date. We wanted to get everybody approved tonight. That's why we have a really short special meeting at 7 o'clock. Do we have to wait until 7 o'clock? Yeah.
I moved that we don't.
That at 7 o'clock. It looks like we'll probably have some time in between, but we'll just open it up like a normal meeting, just appoint them and That'll be it. And then we will start there of scheduling a date, trying to fill everybody out a good time of the day to do it and a good day to do it. And we'll start moving on that. We know that everybody won't be able to show up to every meeting, but I think if we get 75, 80% participation at each meeting, that'll be a great progress.
Yeah, because if they all show up, we'll be one over the quota.
I was just thinking that.
Point.
Okay.
It'll be virtual.
Now we're going to talk about, we got the 2020 budget. That's going to take a while. City cleanup day. That date is set for the 17th, 16th. On the 16th, I think that we have, I'm going to let John speak on it because he's been talking to the chamber and a local business that's going to help out with some food and things. Go ahead, John.
So I did some work on this. Mayor Hillman offered to help us with the dumpster. Still trying to get that donated if possible. I'm anticipating a cost of between $300 and $400 for that, depending on.
John, could you get closer to the speaker or microphone, please?
Yes, let me move really quickly.
Did all the end there, though.
Can you hear me?
Very good. Yeah. Thank you.
There you go.
So we're trying to get the dumpster costs donated to the city. We're still working on that a little bit. If we can't, I know you put that little spreadsheet in there. I think that's about $300 to $400 to get the dumpster cost done. We think we have enough trash bags and gloves to cover this event. We're going to kind of go through and make sure of that, just to make sure. I'm kind of anticipating, based on social media response and some people I've talked to, that 50 people isn't unreasonable to attend this event, which would be great. We'll see what actually happens when the day comes. The other costs here, in the past, we have done either a barbecue or a little breakfast kind of option for people. And so as we're playing with the budget, we know budget is an important concern here and we need to be responsible with money. I have worked with a couple of local business owners to try to get some discounts available for people. For instance, Tommyknockers has offered us to be able to purchase their breakfast burritos they've been making at a reduced cost. I've also spoken to Smokin' Yards about potentially subsidizing the cost of a lunch. The Chamber of Commerce is interested in participating in this as well. The board is discussing right now what amount of money they may be willing to donate to this. This is a really good way to support our local businesses with some good business coming into their stores. And what our thought was, if we were to put coupons in the bag when they come to pick their trash up, where they could go, say, to Frothy Cup or to Tommyknockers, get a burrito and coffee in the morning, and then the afternoon, go pick up like a pulled pork sandwich after they're done doing the work. We were thinking that would be kind of close to what we've done in the past and kind of a good way to get people out to help with this cleanup. Really, the only two questions I had for you guys was, the first one was whether or not we're a green light on the cleanup in general on the 16th. And that may, the cost there may be the dumpster, but we're still trying to get that donated. And then the other question would be, if we do that, would it be okay to use a small part of the budget that we have allocated for this to do the food work? I kind of estimated my cost here based on 24 participants. Like I just said, we may have more than that, but I don't want to buy too much food here. I'm trying to, be reasonable with what we're talking about. And so on the lunch side, we may potentially have more availability, just depending on how everything works out. And so I just kind of I kind of picked on this on my recommended budget here, just kind of what I thought maximum. I have a feeling especially if we get the dumpster donated, it's going to be much cheaper than this year. I had kind of a maximum of $750 to handle the event.
Hey, John Bordoni, we really haven't, we've always, for this event, we've always taken it loaded it in trucks and taken it up to the transfer station. Isn't that correct?
We've done it both in the past. We have a dumpster at our shop, and we have also rented a dumpster before and put it in the park. So yeah, we could go either way.
Okay. Well, I've in the past, I've been able to get a dumpster for free, a roll-off, donated for free, but the owner of that company no longer owns that company. So I'm going to reach out to another one. I think that I can still pull that off. So give me a day or two. Let me see how that works out.
Hey, Mayor,
Yes.
if that doesn't work, I'll give that a shot as well. Are you talking about Larry at Timberline?
Yeah, I usually got it from Larry. He usually gave it to us. He still may be able to pull a string and get it for us anyway. I'll make those calls tomorrow and see what we can do.
All right, well, if not, let me know on that.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Thanks, Jim. Okay,
I'd be for it, but since Clear Creek County doesn't have any mask in place requirements, I'm a little leery about having 20 to 50 people out there
Let me,
gathered.
I kind of glossed over that. So one of the things that we're trying to do, this is why we're trying to change the food plan so that they would be going to restaurants as they kind of cycle in. We also, in the past, Diane, when she was in charge, like as she's been in charge of this event, has created a really cool map of the city with locations that are typical for cleanup. And so the plan would be is that we were not going to congregate. You know, there's going to be a station at probably the park or wherever where people can pick up trash bags and gloves. And we will encourage the face mask situation, all that, like follow the rules and the guidelines and all of that kind of stuff. And we'll space them out there. They typically have left the trash bags like in a centralized location for pickup for either delivery to the dumpster or to the dump or however we do it. So we may have like a family group of 1 or 2 people that are together, but the idea would be is to try to use this map to kind of say, hey, we've already got Water Wheel Park covered. Why don't you go head up to Ruth Macy Mill Park or something to that effect? And so that way we can kind of manage where people are going through the day.
okay.
Or you could set it up like 2 blocks, have just certain people do like 2 blocks or something like that where they're not running all over town.
Okay.
Is the food okay to go ahead and pursue that as well, or?
Council, what do you have? You okay with John pursuing and getting that lined up for us for the
I
food
am.
options?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
sounds good.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about reduced revenues and what the future of the budget really looks like, to spend money. No, I'm
I
not.
would likely spend less. I think this is the food part of this is $200 to $300. It was, I know what you're saying, it was budgeted, but it would not be a significant expense or part of this expense. I keep it as low as possible. We do have this partnership with the Chamber of Commerce and potentially one other individual, a couple businesses and an individual that would help subsidize this cost. So our goal was, right now it's very difficult to ask some of our restaurants to spend money to donate food items. And so this way we're still encouraging business. And we were thinking a coupon to like Tommyknockers, maybe you go and get your free breakfast burrito and also buy a 6-pack while you're there. And so maybe we're generating a little bit of sales tax there and a little business for them potentially. And that was kind of what we were thinking, but I understand what you're saying there.
Okay.
So
Andy?
just to be clear, and I hope it's clear, there would be no food on site. So the only thing we would have on site at the park would be handing out trash bags, the gloves, and assignments about where the person should pick up trash, and we might have some bottled water. So it'd be very much of a line with social distancing. Pick up your item and go. And our experience in the past has been not everybody's going to show up at 9 a.m. People will come and they'll go, is my guess. So there'll be no congregating at the park, and we were doing everything we could to avoid that.
So the rafting community, every year in the past, has done a river cleanup, and I have heard absolutely nothing from that group about doing that this year. I usually get a call mid-April, and I never got the call, so I'm not. I'm sure that they didn't do it because I haven't seen them out there, and we still don't know where the rafting season's even going to go this year.
Well, there is a group that participates in the fall for river cleanup. They do a special event permit, and they usually congregate down by CRC Park. And a group of them take the river banks.
I think isn't that usually before, like in April? I thought it was
No, it's in
mid-April
the fall.
with what's her name? Hattie?
This is the Cutthroat something group.
Okay, we'll find out.
Cutthroat something.
Okay, John, be careful with our money.
I will not spend very much, I promise.
All right. Now we're gonna get on top. We've got about 40 minutes that we're gonna work on revenue reduction.
So Mayor and Council, this is the continuing discussion about our budget. We know we're gonna have a revenue reduction. We're already experiencing that. We don't know the extent of it yet, but we do know that it's prudent to go through our budget, our approved budget, and figure out where we can reduce expenses now. And so I'd like to continue the discussion. We started with the general fund and we got up through the police department. And I think we're now with court. I think Diane had a few comments on court, and then we'll just keep plugging through the budget. If it takes more time than we have right now, we can pick it up again next week. But I think it's important to go over the entire budget with mayor and council so you can have an idea of what might be possible, what might not. We'd like to get some thoughts from council on certain items, whether you want to cut those or not. Some are maybe a little more clear than others about whether it makes sense to cut at this time. So unless there are any other questions, I'll turn it over to Diane to make a few comments on court as we move through. We are on page 9. This is the budget packet that you had last week. And we'll just continue going through that. As a reminder, we've got several columns there. That first column is the actual expenditure for 2019. The next column is the budget for 2020. The third column is the amount spent year to date, and that's probably at least several weeks old. And then the last column in red is what department heads have proposed as possible reductions. So, Diane?
Mayor and council, I had discussion with Kelsey about some of these items, and training, there have been allocated $500. We can eliminate that. If Kelsey needs to go to a class, we can certainly take it from admin, but we didn't see any classes for the rest of this year. Postage, $300. She said she doesn't spend that in postage, so we can eliminate the entire $300. Interpreters budgeted $100. I think we've had 2 interpreters in the 20-some years I've been here, so we can eliminate that $100. And the restitution, the final one, budgeted was $100. We can eliminate that in its entirety as well. It's about a little over $1,000.
Okay, thank you.
What was the first one, Diane?
It was
Training.
Training.
Okay, $500 for training. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
I actually had a question for Diane. I'm curious because we spend about $1,600 a month to retain our judge, and almost another $1,300 to retain the prosecutor. And I'm just wondering, do we pass these costs along with, say, our court fees to reimburse us for having those folks on staff?
Well, are you talking about fines?
Yeah, I would assume there's court fees when you go to court and you're availing yourself of our prosecutor, time and our judge's time. And like I said, there's, almost $3,000 a month in retainer. And it just seemed to me that if you're availing yourself of the court system, then there would be some type of court costs that are along with that to offset it.
Currently, Chuck, our court costs are $30, and it would be, per defendant. Ford Wheatley, when he was here, he would review that every so often, so it is comparable to, other municipalities and cities. So I would say that the court fee comes close to covering those costs.
Okay, yeah, because a little quick math, we'd have to have about 100 people a month use our system, our courts at $30 to come up with around $3,000. Of course, there's probably some staff time, but I just didn't know if it was time to take a look at that. I would hate for the citizens of Idaho Springs to subsidize, the our court system. I mean, ideally it would just break even. I'm not saying make money on people's tax, but I'm just saying that,
What's our normal docket? How many people are on a,
I say average per month, 50.
did you hear that, Chuck?
Yeah.
Their average docket's about 50 per month.
Okay, so that would be, if we kept $30, that'd be about 1,500. Which again, I just think that, maybe our court fees need to be closer to 60 if we're gonna have 50 people. So I just think that we should be around a break-even point when you consider the judge retainer, the prosecutor, and at least some staff.
Well, like I said, Judge Wheatley looked at those fees. It has been, I want to say, a couple years. And what he doesn't want to do, and maybe now that we have a new judge, he might want to look at it. But you're right in the perception that the city of Idaho Springs residents are paying, for those salaries.
Right.
So
Makes a lot of sense,
the
Chuck.
$30 is pretty comparable to what other cities and municipalities are charging.
And we just looked at that a couple of years ago on our budget.
It was a couple years.
Mr. Mayor, if I might add, there's also, I'm not a fan of large fines, of course, but Chuck, one of the things that does happen, there are fines attached to those that goes into the general budget. So in addition to the court fee, the process does oftentimes includes a punitive fine that also goes into the general fund that assists in covering the other city court costs as well. So we're not the kind of town where we generate large sums of money from fines because the guys are pretty generous and issue a number of warnings, but also associated with those court cases oftentimes is a punitive fine.
Chief, I think you and I are on the same page. I think all of us detest, speed traps, stereotypical, where you feel like folks are getting shaken down or something. And, I would never insinuate we should do that.
Sure.
I do believe I saw something along the lines of $135,000 last year with fines. And so I understand what you're saying. I was just worried that we're subsidizing the courts with there's about $3,000 worth of retainer.
Right.
And, I'm actually glad that you pointed that out. I can see how, that shorts things up or squares a circle, if you will, if we've got that additional money going to the general fund.
Okay, all right. Okay, we're done with courts. Fire department, I'm the chair of that board, and we don't see any way of cutting those contributions from any municipality or the ESD or anything. Emergency ESD. Yeah, ESD. So there's really no cost savings there and what we can do with there. Parks?
Mayor and council, will start off with the elimination of the 2 hourly employees that we typically hire during the summer. That's approximately $15,000 savings. Next is we'll eliminate the proposed landscaping contract, which was $20,000. Excuse me. And then on further down, training, we'll cut that in half, 250. Employee incentive, another 250. Travel and meals, we'll eliminate that, $50. Equipment rental, we'll reduce that by 100. We do need to rent an aerator lawns. Where are we at? Communication equipment, we haven't spent that. We'll eliminate that 50. The 10-60-60-10 miscellaneous supplies, we'll reduce that by 2,000. Safety items or tools, we'll reduce that by 1,000. Lamp posts, $500. We'll eliminate that. Hopefully nobody hits them. Sand and gravel, we'll reduce that by half. Tree trimming and replacement, we'll reduce that by 2,000. Miscellaneous parts, we'll reduce that by 1,000. Weed control, we'll reduce that by 4,000. Equipment purchases 5,000, we'll eliminate that. So in total, that's for parks, that's approximately $51,773 savings for reduction.
Good job, John.
You have a question on the weed control. Is that for the clematis generally, or is that like dandelions out in the lawns? I just wonder if that weed control will affect the visual in our parks very much.
No, that's more for the clematis and hiring a weed sprayer.
Oh, okay. All right.
So we'll continue to do what we can to eradicate the weeds, but
right,
just won't spend as much on them.
Okay, but nothing in here will mean our lawns will go brown or anything like that.
I certainly hope not, no. You know, we did increase the rate for municipality on water and sewer, and we are going to have to water the lawns considerably this year to get them back to green to where they were.
Right.
So hopefully that doesn't affect us a whole lot, but we'll try and watch that also.
Yeah, I know the long-term forecasts are hot, windy.
That's true. Cemetery funds, we really can't, that's a different fund. We really can't reduce that by any. We really don't spend that much on the cemetery. So I would go down to
Hey, John,
fund revenues.
John, before you go on, just at the bottom of page 11, you'll notice that, and of course, we've already made some additional cuts as we've talked through this. I know Chief added some, and we'll retally this, but as you can see, just with this first run through in the general fund with the departments, we've identified over $200,000 in reductions. So again, I think we're going to have to probably revisit this again, but I just wanted to point that out, that in the general fund alone, that's what we found. So unless there are any other questions on the general fund at the moment, John was about to go into the improvement fund, which I think would be our next step, which is a separate.
And I really think that the improvement fund would be more of an Andy discussion there.
I'm happy to lead that off. This is kind of a joint, everyone will chime in here from the departments because there are projects for police and projects for public works. So let's start on the revenue side. We're on page 12 right now. And again, a guesstimate for the reduction of sales tax from mid-March to the end of April is about $88,000. You'll see that about midway down on page 12. That is a guesstimate. I think when we get the sales tax report in the next few days, right, Diane? Perhaps?
Hopefully.
Okay, we'll probably get the sales tax report in time for our next meeting, I'm hoping. And that'll give us a better idea of what the actual reduction in sales tax was for March. Right now, as you know, there's a 2-month delay and when we get those sales tax reports from the state. So right now it's just estimating based upon which businesses are open and which businesses aren't. So that's what that number is. Parking revenue, the next item there is parking revenue. We have about a little over 100,000 that is built up in that account from this past year. And we budgeted for about 200,000. That was thinking we would have a more normal year. So with the suspension of the parking management program, most of that 200,000 will not be realized. It's my opinion, and a lot of this is trying to look at the crystal ball and trying to make judgments, estimates just look, just on what we know, I don't know when we're gonna have enough traffic and enough business in town here to need the managed parking, or at least as we had it before, in the form we had it before. I just don't know. I mean, maybe things will improve faster, but right now, for budgeting purposes, I'm not counting on any more parking revenue this year. It's for, we would need to discuss this probably at another time, but I do think with John and with Chris, we do need to have a more discussion about managing parking, paid parking aside, managing parking in the city, even at a lower level, because right now we don't have any. It's really you park wherever you want for as long as you want. And at some point, we know that's going to gradually increase, and we're going to have to figure out how to deal with that. State historic grants, we decided to we are going to postpone that until next year. We had talked about there are 2 application periods a year. We had talked about applying this spring. That deadline has passed with everything else going on. Depending upon how things are looking in the budget process, and for next year, we may want to consider putting in an application this fall to the State Historic Fund for doing the train renovation for next year. John, do you have something to add on?
We have the one that we did receive for this year. We have the grant that we received this year for the $15,000 survey plan, right?
That is correct. John just reminded me that we have been awarded a $15,000 grant from Henderson for the redoing the train viewing platform. We have a proposal for you, and we're going to bring that to you next week. We've talked with Henderson about whether we can use that money differently. They have approved this idea, and I guess I'll make doing a little teaser here. We'd like to bring it to you, John and I would like to bring that to you next week for an idea that we have, given our current situation that we have with the pandemic, how we can use that money differently with Henderson's support.
The survey plan.
And John also reminded me that we do have the survey plan, that we already have a contractor on board, the historic survey. And that you may recall that public meeting to kick that off was mid-March, and that had to be postponed. So we have not rescheduled that because we think it's important that we get that started on the right foot, and we want to make sure that we can have that public meeting and get process started with people being informed about it. The next item there for cut is the grant from the VCAMP grant. That was from the Colorado Parks and Wildlife. We did apply for that. We were not awarded that grant to build the first trail at Virginia Canyon Mountain Park. So that would be reduced as well, at $250,000, since we not received that grant. So the total reduction in revenues, of course, significant amount of that reduction is from grants that will not be receiving, and the parking revenue is $723,000. So that's on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, the items, and feel free, John and Chief, to chime in if you'd like, but I'll just start going through this. Engineering, eliminate $10,000 for police station design. This was a bit of a placeholder. We didn't know how fast the design and construction of the new fire station up on 103 was going to happen. We're still working with CDOT on getting that property assigned for that purpose officially. And so that's not going to happen this year. So that's a $10,000 reduction. City Hall equipment, we can reduce that by $8,000. Other street projects, John believes we can reduce that by about 3/4, so $15,000 reduction there. Park improvements, this includes the grant that we didn't get, and also renovation to the Citizens Park restrooms. That would be a $375,000 reduction. Of course, again, the 250 of that is the grant that we didn't get. Public work vehicle purchase, so we might be able to reduce that by 1,000. The skid steer has already been purchased, but it came a little bit under that budgeted amount of 48,000, so reduce that by 1,000. Police department equipment, Chief, do you want to touch on those items? You're on mute, Chief.
There we go. Yeah, we did request some defensive equipment, so a weapon, a rifle in particular, that we can forgo with. Also, we have 2 vehicles that can be retired, but I think we can forego purchasing that new vehicle for another year. We can get by on that. Andy, I'm sorry, I don't have the forms in front of me. Was there any other major equipment we took off?
Chief, we had the rifle at 3,600, which we're deferring.
Right.
Station improvements to your current quarters to try to make
Right.
it workable for 30,000. That can be deferred.
Right. That's one we already discussed. And I want to tell you about the rifle. I know it seems like a little exorbitant, but when Justin Richardson moved to South Dakota to go work for Custer County, we lost a component of the SWAT team, one of the snipers. So he had used his own rifle. So we had discussed just fielding somebody else. We had 3 members on the SWAT team in the department. So we're just going to forego that for a year or look for another source.
And Chief, the other thing you might touch on, I know last week you touched on this, but I think it's important to emphasize is we were budgeted in the improvement fund for new police radios at 42,000, and I know you came well under.
Yeah,
that
we did. We came in under budget, and that of course all occurred before the COVID-19 emergency. We decided that we weren't going to put 2020 DTR radios in 2004 vehicles. So we do have a couple of vehicles that will work off our handsets. When the time comes around to replace those vehicles, when the funding becomes available, then we'll include the new radios in the package with the emergency equipment. So all in all, we did good. The radios came in cheaper than we thought. The company, although the radios we swapped out are no longer serviced by Motorola, they did actually allow us to trade them in. So we got a little bit of return on the obsolete radios.
And am I correct, Chief? You found about $20,000?
Yeah, it's about $20,000. We just submitted for our last bill, which was for the installation of the radios. I don't believe we missed anything. I believe everybody billed us on time, and we have all the equipment. So I do believe we're going to come in right around $20,000 under budget for the radios.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
A little farther down, eliminating the downtown master plan, we were budgeted for $67,000 on that. Library building improvement, landscaping for the library, $25,000. I did talk with the library about that. They're aware of that. Might be that's on the list, if you will, for reduction. So they're aware of that. We certainly don't want to jam them up, but they're aware that might have to be likely would have to be deferred till next year. And then land acquisition, that's reduced a significant amount. So the total expenditures reduction proposed is about $1 million there at the bottom. If you go to the next page, also it's considered part of the improvement fund, but it's broken out. We're on page 14 at the top, historic sites facilities. Again, part of improvement fund, but it's its own section. City Hall improvements, the ADA renovation of the bathrooms here at City Hall at $80,000, and the restoration of the windows on the main level here at $100,000. Those are both being eliminated for this year. Brian Hose House, that work, next line item, Brian Hose House, that work is almost completed. I think we're just down to painting, right, John?
Should be wrapped up here in the next week
Detail
or
work.
two.
Yep. So that was already underway earlier this year and will be completed. Hose House number 2, 15,000, that's being proposed to be deferred. Train restorations we talked about, we're not applying for that grant, so that's not happening. The survey planning that John mentioned earlier, that's the historic survey plan in the city at 16,005. We're already under contract for that, and that's expected to continue later this year. So that's another $420,000 in savings. And then, so the total improvement fund reduction is about 1.4 million. Any questions on the improvement fund?
Yes, the reductions are quite substantial.
Yes. Yep. The one other fund, the last fund, the last fund that's funded by sales tax primarily is the street fund. And again, as you see there, we're estimating from mid-March through the end of April, about $88,000 drop in sales tax there. So that's one we're keeping an eye on because that's where we're finishing up the street projects. We're under contract to Riverside and Minor. They're down to the final work there. Most of that contract has been paid out, but we're now down to subgrade work, final paving, and that work is still expected to be completed before Memorial Day. Did I state that right, John?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, and then so that's then the other main funds I wanted to touch on. Boy, we may get through all this tonight, which is great. Water fund, water and sewer fund. It's the 51 fund. I'm now on page 15. Of course, there's no sales tax involved here unless it's a loan from the general fund to the improvement fund to the water and sewer fund, which we already have one of those loans in place from earlier years. But the water and sewer fund is funded off of user fees. So that is a standalone enterprise fund paid for by the users. But John did, overseeing water and sewer, we took a look at that as well, because if we're reducing our expenses in other funds, we felt that we also ought to look at the water and sewer fund, even though it's not directly related to the reduction in sales tax.
Another thing that we need to consider on the revenues from the water is, without all the businesses being open, we'll still have the base rate, but we won't have the usage, but we also won't have to produce as much water. And I really don't know where that balance is out at. So we need to keep that in mind.
Absolutely. So we felt it was prudent to also look at the possible reductions in the water and sewer fund. So there aren't as many that we were able to identify, at least on the first run through. But John, why don't you go ahead and start on page 16 if you would, with what's thinking there.
So the first one that we were going to try and reduce was 5103 design engineering. We have that in there just because if something comes up, if we do need it, we'll cut that by half, by 5,000. Training, we're going to try and cut by 2,000. Employee incentive and rec passes, we'll eliminate that. That's another $700. Travel and meals, we'll cut that in half by 100. Safety items, we'll cut that in half by 500. And unfortunately, you can see a lot of these others, we're already expending a considerable amount of money on water and sewer. So I really hate to cut them and then leave ourselves short. So in total, in the water fund, we had $8,300 cut for expenditures. And then further down on page 18, water distribution. Which I hope that we can do. As you know, we had a break on Highway 103, and that was an expensive break. We need to order replacement parts just to have in case that happens again, and you're probably looking at $2,500 for those replacement parts to have on hand. But as you can see, if we don't have them and we can't fix it, the city will run out of water. So we absolutely don't want that to happen. Repair and maintenance of hydrants, we can cut that by 2,500. Training, we'll cut that in half to 500. Materials and supplies reservoir, we'll cut that in half by 500. And tools, we'll cut that by half to 2,000. So total distribution is about $6,500 that we'll try and cut. And then in the wastewater side, on page 20, we have 5200-5103 design engineering, which is unplanned projects. We'll cut that by 2,500. Page 21, training, we'll cut that by 1,000. Again, employee incentive, rec passes, we'll cut that by 700. Travel and meals were cut by half to 100. Page 22, the total for wastewater expenditure reduction is $4,300. And then again on page 22, wastewater collections, training, we'll cut that by 500. Materials, supplies, we'll cut that by 2,000. Tools will cut by 1,000. And equipment purchases will cut by 1,000. And that for wastewater expenditures is a total of about $4,500. So on page 24, 54, 72, 73, 20 water distribution projects, we will cut that by 40,000. We're going to postpone the replace or installation of a generator for the Montane water pumps. We do need to keep the 100,000 in there for leak detection and repair for the Highway 103 line. We still believe that we do have some leaks that we need to identify and get repaired. And we have a proposal to have a leak detect company in July come up and start doing most of the city for about less than $6,000, which is really a bargain to begin with. So, and we do have the line on the Highway 103 bridge that we need to repair that's over the river. Wastewater collection, it's 55, 72, 73, 20. For inflow and mitigation, I'm going to try and cut that by half, which would be $50,000. And that is about all that I had on there. We will do everything that we can to cut expenses, but as you can see, Thursday and Friday, we didn't do a very good job at that with the break on Highway 103. And we do have another water leak that we do know on Pine Slope that we will probably start on tomorrow.
All right, thanks, John. Thanks, Chief. Do we have any questions, council, before we dismiss this part of our meeting?
If I have to do a resolution on a amended budget sometime,
I will talk with Carmen about that and see how we best want to do that.
it might be later in the year. Yeah.
Right. It's a very dynamic situation. Again, I hope to get a little better information. We get the sales tax report and you know, in a couple of weeks, we'll probably have an idea from the governor about the next phase with the, you know, we're in safer at home mode now. Will there be some changes coming up at the end of the month or not? And I think that will give us some indication of what the summer might look like. So So we're gonna continue to monitor this. I'll keep reporting back to council periodically on where we are. But yes, John, we probably need a resolution, about the budget.
Are we gonna make any public announcement once we get to the final number or the public announcement of the deep but necessary cuts that we've made, so the public understands, how hard the staff's working to keep everything in line, and some services obviously gonna be cut, but, necessary? Anything publicly announced at any stage?
I think we probably do need to do that at
Yes.
some point. Yes, we did want to make sure we had this run through first with council,
Right.
the department heads there, just to make sure that we weren't missing something or something that really can't be cut. So, but yes, I think that is important to get that communicated.
Okay. And I will repeat, because I was told I better do it at least 3 times this evening. Anybody that's listening to us right now, check the city's website under the COVID-19 page to find resources for food distribution, financial assistance options, and more. We will continue to update this page as more resources become available. So we encourage you to keep checking it back. Thank you, and we'll end this work session. Couple-minute break, and we'll have a really quick special meeting. Okay, all council with me?
Yes.
Jim's not back yet.
Jim's not there, Chuck's not there. We'll give it a couple more minutes. Oh, no wonder my nose is hurting from one of the rubber pieces fell off.
Oh.
Sound uncomfortable? I can wait another 3 minutes. That's all this is gonna be.
I'm hoping you do it.
Okay. Tiny. 3 minutes. Oh, I do. You gave me that list. Everybody's back. Okay, it is 7:01. We've got a special meeting on this May 4th. Is that correct? Yes. Can I have a roll call, please?
Michael Hillman.
Here.
Scott Pennell, Chuck Harmon,
Here,
Paul Boland,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Here,
Jim Clark.
Here.
All right, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we're doing this special meeting. I will make the motion. Make a motion to appoint Terry Boland.
You gotta approve the agenda.
I'm sorry. Oh, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I would move that we approve the agenda for the May 4th, 2020 meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. I will make the motion to, I'll make a motion to appoint Terry Boland, Carla Cole, Ursula Cruzaglia, Josh Dubian, Dan Ebert, Steve Indris, Asta Keen, Mary Jane Lovely, Sadie Peak, Tracy Stokes, Marcel Template, and Randall Watson to set on our recovery task force. Do I have a second?
Second,
Motion is second. Discussion. Hearing none. Roll call.
Michael Hillman.
Yes.
Scott Pennell, Chuck Harmon,
yes.
Paul Boland,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes,
Jim Clark.
Yeah.
All right, motion passes. It is now 7:02, meeting adjourned. Fastest meeting ever.
That one will be hard to be